right, dear people, I'm Bev Lutz. I'm from the Center of Coaching and Organizations, and I'm welcoming you to today's Growth Rings with Ann Boyum. As many of you know, Center for Coaching and Organizations is a 501c3 nonprofit. We're all about maximizing human potential through the power of coaching, but especially focused on coaching in organizations. And those organizations can be anything from communities, nonprofits, healthcare, education, NGOs, corporations, small businesses, single person startups, you name it, they're all organizations. We care about all of them, and we believe there's great value to be had from coaching, whether it's external coaches, internal coaches, people using coaching skill sets, developing coaching cultures. It's all powerful, and many of you already know the changes that can come from that. CCO sponsors these Growth Ring learning events about every other month. They're free of charge. Everyone is welcome to them, so feel free to spread the word. They're also recorded, as Annie mentioned before we started recording this one, and you'll find them on the CCO YouTube channel, and you can access them through our website. We also do community connects events, and we're moving to all in-person connects. And what those are really, really informal, wonderful gatherings, typically in a coffee shop or some sort of community gathering place where anybody who shows up shows up. Anything that we choose to talk about, we choose to talk about. Emily and I had a great conversation the last time we were together at a Community Connects. And there's going to be a Community Connects, excuse me, in October, likely in Stillwater, in December, likely in Eagan, and in February, likely in Edina. And you'll find out more information about that on LinkedIn and in our website also. But what I really want to get to, besides telling you that we also have an annual summit that's happening in April, and we also have a wonderful cohort of ICF accredited coaching education called the Executive Coaching and Organizations Program. We call it ECHO. I'll tell you more about that at the end of the program. But what I'm most excited about now is introducing you to my friend and one of my favorite delightful humans, Annie Boyum. And one of the things I love about having Annie do a program for Growth Rings is she truly is inside out of coaching. She was inside Target championing the development of a coaching program as an executive coach and leadership development consultant. And she's also been outside for many years, both on her own in her own business, as well as doing work with organizations like the People Side. One of the things that is particularly wonderful about Annie is her directness. And many of you know, because you're Annie fans, that there's a loving, firm directness about that probably has called forth, I know it has for me, called forth things in you that you weren't even sure you had in there. And I would say that if you seek inspired action, enriched relationships, outrageous joy, and meaningful impact, then you can seek no more. Just join me in welcoming Ann Boyum to our Growth Rings today. Annie, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited. Oh, thanks, Deb. This is going to be a mashup of people from the current work that I'm doing in the CCO ECHO program as a mentor coach. So I'm in the privileged position of listening to coaches as they develop their own coaching voice on their coaching and organization certification journey. And I've really enjoyed that. And I was invited back to participate in this year's session through Bev and through Naomi Banks. And then I did, like Bev said, I started with St. Thomas when it was a graduate level program at St. Thomas several years ago, and I was working for Target internal at the time. So I see Kate Nelson and a lot of people, and Greg and Megan and Jen, and a lot of us work together at Target. So this is a mashup of some of my favorite people, and some of you know I've done this before. I just haven't done it on Zoom. So it's kind of fun to do that on Zoom. Thanks for coming on, Scott. You're one of my people that go way back to high school. So I hate to say, but if you know me now, you're going to probably know me in the future. And that's just because we're having a lot of good fun together and learning. One of the scariest things about today was that I put together a PowerPoint. So, oh my goodness, only for the purpose of guiding. Greg sat across from me where I was like, I don't think I can do it. And with the scaffolding, I got some support. So let me do a quick share. Only the PowerPoint is only meant for scaffolding. So you do not need to pay a lot of attention to the words on the screen, but it's the guide that allow for the timing and the functionality, because we've choreographed this for you in mind. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So first, we'll do a little bit of let's see where those little arrows are, setup of what we said we were going to do. We're really exposing the difference between a nice conversation and a coaching conversation, leveraging directness in the spirit of growth. So while I might sound like I might have a little edge to me, I have a little edge to me because I have a belief and a stand for what you want to create in your life. And most people will say I'm pretty nice most of the time until I'm not, right? I also got invited to do a new glamour shot. So that is scheduled for October. So no bangs today. Here's what I thought we would do. We're going to divide this into 1 hour. We'll do a workshop. The content will be all about discovery in the first hour. Then we're going to workshop it for you all to practice the last half hour if you can stay and want to stay. So we're intentionally dividing this, and we'll give you more structure about that in a moment. But just high level, we're going to find out who's in the room, who's here today, so that people who are lurking later and learning later might get a sense of who's here. What do you want to learn? It's super important for me and most of the coaching clients that I work with that we get grounded. So we will do a grounding exercise. We're going to play with a single model. There's not a lot of teach out in this. And then we're going to dive into demos. And you're going to be able to watch and reflect and add things to your own coaching or leadership toolkit. And then, like I said, you can linger longer. So that's just the guide. I love we have Cameo Kitty already. Thanks, Bev. So like I said, verbally, we've got a 90-minute program if you can stay, 60-minute of material and demos, last 30 minutes for your practice. Some of you are visual rather than verbal. So here's a picture of that. We're just exploring, demoing. We're going to pause, complete, and close, stop recording, and then linger longer. Real life practice. So let's get a sense of who is here. I'm just wondering who is here. I'd love for you to put in chat, not your title or position, but what brought you here today? Are you a learner? Are you an explorer, a coach, influencer, all those kinds of things? You can use titles if you want to, but that's not why we're here. So let's see if we can get a chatterfall going and just find out who's in the room with us. Refreshing topic, Deb. Putting on learning hat. Yay! Learn and explore. Coaching student. Coach impersonating as a student. Nice job, Michael. Coaching recovering HR professional. Oh my goodness, I love that. I do call myself a recovering targeteer. Coach looking for inspiration. Business marketing. Out of practice. Lifelong learner. Beautiful. Thanks, Scott. Exploring new directions, reconnecting. Learning geek. Annie Fan. Yes. Thank you, Jen. Reconnecting coach education. After St. Thomas. Wonderful. Thank you, Jen. Smiley. That's really fun. So we do have several Jens. So if I call out to Jen, you're going to know who you are. But if I need to say Jen Chen or Jen Johnson or Jen Smiley, let me know. Oh, good, Lynn, working on your ACC. Good. And explore being more challenging and what it means to me as a coach, right? Certified in narrative life coaching, welcoming continuing education. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I used to do live facilitation in the classroom where people didn't really get a great amount of choice of going to these classes. So many of you have probably been in those classes where there were learners, vacationers, and I think we referred to them as like prisoners or something. So none of you are here other than by your own choice, I hope. But if you are welcome to enjoy the experience anyway. We also got a little bit of tech check on hearing some voices, but while we're doing, because we're recording, while we are in an exploration where it doesn't require a shout out, I would invite you to put your microphone on unless it somehow compromises your learning experience. There will be plenty of time to be unmiked. So go ahead for logistics purposes to go ahead and do that. I too am a learner. When Bev and I started talking about this, one of the things I noticed was I had so many flooding ideas come in on what we could do that parsing out to what might be most helpful took me back to my roots of simplification. So it also brought up a lot of worry, flurry, excitement, even a little anxiety. So I couldn't go any further without introducing four square breathing and allowing and inviting each one of you to do this with me, eyes open or closed. I will describe it first, and then I will guide us through it with a counter app that will guide us through it. So you may be familiar with four square breathing. If you are, great. If you're not, it's really easy. Imagine a square on your inhale for 4 beats. We will hold for 4 beats and go across. On the exhale, as if you're going down that side, 4 beats. Hold for 4 beats across. If the square feels complicated, don't worry about it. We have a timer. I'm going to request, are there any questions before I turn this timer on? We do not need to be in a hurry. We have plenty of time. And if you have a question, I may not be able to see you, but Bev, can you see everyone? No questions. Okay, well, let me go and show you what my amazing husband did with AI, because I couldn't say I did it with AI. Let's see. Here we go. We won't, this is don't speed breathe in, right? I'm just letting you get an orientation. And then when you're ready, eyes open or closed, we will start on the breathe in now. I invite you to do a few more rounds. One more. And if that's helpful, keep going. What I like about using this is I've helped leaders and organizations breathe this way while in a meeting and noticing anxious or blurry thinking coming up. And I've watched them on the video and verified that they don't look any different if they're doing this than they would if they were not breathing with this approach. So if there's one gift with purchase you take with you today, let it be something as simple as the breathing. Yeah, good. Thanks. So I'm curious, we talked about what brought you here. Anything that you're really hoping to learn or take away that you haven't already mentioned in the chat? Something you hope to learn or take away that you haven't already mentioned in the chat. Nothing yet. Okay. One of the things I wanted to allow for time, a little time for, is recognizing that I said we were going to do a live demo. And I'm curious what it would feel like if you were the live demo volunteer. Just notice where that takes you. Before I introduce the model, I want you to get a sense of like, does that bring you comfort? Like, oh, coaching with Annie? Sure. Or does it put you in a learning zone maybe? Or a little bit of a, I hope not, right? Just notice what happens in your ecosystem, in your body, in your environment, flashes of excitement, flashes of heat or panic, maybe nah, I'd never volunteer, so I have no reaction about that whatsoever. And we're just raising the awareness on noticing. However, your sensation shows up, it's okay. At no time am I going to throw anyone into a panic zone that doesn't want to be there, or I really hope you don't hang out the whole time in comfort zone. And I'm going to introduce those zones in a minute. I hope there's some movement between surprise and delight and curiosity and even confusion. Like confusion is welcome because we learn when we're in confusion. So I'm not even going to ask you if you're willing to do it. We're just going to move on and do an introduction. But just notice the sensation of like, oh, did I like that? Did I not like that? So as I mentioned, I grew up at Target. And so the bullseye is the metaphor here, but it comes from a book called Talent is Overrated by Jeffrey Colvin, which I read many moons ago. And Greg Smith, perhaps you did too. But it's comfort zone, learning zone, panic zone. So imagine the comfort zone as a place that you could hang out. You know it. It's masterful. You're good at it. You could basically do it by just phoning it in. The problem or the disadvantage of comfort zone is it deteriorates over time when we aren't learning. Like our comfort zone, the thing we thought we were really good at, we will eventually be less effective at, and it'll be less comfortable when we stop learning. So we want that comfort zone to merge into that learning zone. And that learning zone is where that new, novel, fresh perspective, a little bit of like apprehension, uncertainty, unfamiliarity. This is where deliberate practice shows up. And I've got this written down as well. And then the panic zone, if you find yourself thrown into the panic zone today during our process, or if it's something that you've recently visited and something that popped up in your life, know that it's usually a threat response. Our brains are going to either go offline or overdrive. And to find yourself as best you can back into that learning zone would likely require only a big, deep breath. Like, okay, I don't need to panic, or I am panicking and I can phone a friend, or I can normalize this for myself and get back to that learning zone without having to retreat all the way back into your comfort zone. Again, any zone you're in is okay. What I want to be able to do is introduce these so that you know where you are in relationship to these various areas. And it's simple enough, right? Like, I get that, Anne. That's not that complicated. That's the whole thing we're using today as our form of model for learning. There's a lot of other models we can use, but what I find in coaching is if I introduce comfort zone, learning zone, panic zone to someone that I'm coaching or I'm leading in their team environment, they will likely get pretty comfortable with their own understanding of the material. Like, yep, got it the first time. But when I introduce the next layer of this is where the aha comes from. So let me show you the next visual. So on one side, you can see here you are with your comfort zone, your learning zone, your panic zone, and you're familiar with it. But what if you were able to understand someone else's comfort zone in proximate to your panic zone or your learning zone is just overall bigger. You've been here longer. You know this work. It's easy for you. I have seen executives and coaches who are so comfortable doing what they are doing that they have a misunderstanding or um, a lack of even understanding or expectation or compassion on where someone else's comfort zone is or where their learning zone is. So when I've worked with people, they really get excited about, oh, my comfort zone is someone else's panic zone. That's not what I want. And so, in support of everyone reaching their learning zone. So I want to pause here before we move on. I've got a little bit more words to describe it, and then we're going to play a little bit in this space. So questions, comments, what are you noticing? How might you use this, right? A battery of possibilities. You can speak or text.
So, Annie, while people are thinking about your question to them, I wanted to just mention some things that did come up in the chat when you said, "What are you hoping for that you might not have mentioned already?" And
Oh, good. I
Catherine
didn't see that.
says,
Yeah.
yeah, Catherine says, a refresh of my direct edge. Rachel says, how to be more direct when there is a client avoiding having a clear focus, the slippery client.
Oh, yeah.
And Jen Smiley, or I'm sorry, and Anna says how to give feedback and not have it feel like a jab at someone's personality or character.
Wonderful. Thank you. We will hold space for all of that, right? Um, and I love the mixture of like what's my edge versus someone else's edge. What's my comfort zone finding a topic or experiencing a slippery client. And also, what do I do when feedback might feel like it's about the other person, personality or character versus what they're doing. So love the distinctions. Good. Thanks, Bev. And we're going to continue to do it that way. So what did you notice about comfort zone, learning zone, panic zone? And it could be any of you that already provided context for learning, a new awareness come in.
So Jennifer Chenoweth says, love the idea of introducing these zones inside of coaching conversations. I like the simple graphic and that someone could name where they're at.
Yeah. I can't tell you how often I use this. That's why I went back to like, what do I use almost every single day? And it's a first awareness, comfort zone, learning zone, panic zone. Where are they in relationship to this consistent, persistent, or new experience they're having? And then where might the other people be? And often, if I go back to that idea of giving somebody feedback, where does that throw you? Are you in your comfort zone, or would you be in your learning zone? And how can you invite them to reach you in that learning zone? So, um, development plan or to-do list. If there isn't a stretch, they're in their comfort zone. Oh, I love that distinction, right? Like how stretch is this? How outside of your, normal routine does this take you? Yeah, excellent. Good, let's keep going. We're gonna like the third zone. I usually think comfort zone and growth zone, but there's truth to the panic zone. Yeah, we're so wired for self-preservation and safety that sometimes we're unaware of how we won't go past our learning zone into the panic zone to even know what that edge is. One of my mentor coaches and teachers and friends is Therese Keenest, and she calls that the edge of possibility. When the panic and the learning zone meet, we are in a position to create new possibilities. When the edge of comfort and learning zone meet, we tend to be more iterative, a little better, than a little not so good. So, yeah, let's see. We can also normalize when panic happens. Absolutely. Yeah, that we can just look at it and go, I am in a panic zone. And what do we need in a panic zone? The learning that I've experienced is we need a breath and we need others. When we're panicking, we're usually creating a sensation that we're all alone and we're cutting off our oxygen. I'm gonna stop watching chat for a minute and come back to this because I wanted to show you, I have two different experiences on how I can roll forward just in case. Go ahead.
Yeah, Eric was saying this is similar to what he calls name it to tame it.
Yes, absolutely, Eric. There's so like one of the things that when I was imagining this is I tried to provide all my sources of truth, and I concluded that there are so many versions of this concentric circle that I just stopped. I'm just sharing a couple of models, but yes, name it to tame it is also a great one. I thought I would just give you some words to be able to distinguish, but I also would love to hear your own, in your own voice or in chat, what these might feel like or what the sensations are for you. Like, what is it like when you're in your comfort zone? If we just allow this to be a little reflective for a minute. What do you notice when you're in your comfort zone? How how alive are you? How what's your energy level? What's your thought patterns? Anyone? Are you chatting? I can't see you. There we go.
Yeah, and
Autopilot. Yeah.
Jennifer, sure, take screenshots, but also know, like Annie and I have said, this is being recorded and it will be up on YouTube, so you'll be able to find it.
Yeah. For sure. Um,
Thanks
and
for
we will,
asking, though.
yeah, we will make it easy. It
Yeah,
feels safe, comfort zone, pretty comfortable. Don't need to think very hard. Doesn't take a lot of effort. Relaxed, right? These are really important. Think about the value of comfort is your rest and recovery. Coming back to your comfort zone will allow you to recharge, rejuvenate. And often some of the greatest energizing moments come in that learning zone. Oh, I love daydream during work, right? It's just like, here I am, I'm doing this, but I'm also imagining this. And it can be complacent. It can be complacent. When I'm in my comfort zone too long, I am bored. Anyone resemble that? Where all of a sudden it's like, oh, one more day? I used to call it second first, same as the first. I need something else to happen. Right, good. Let's just do a quick chatter fall on learning. We'll do a quick one on panic, and then we're going to move into some activating. What about learning? What are some of the descriptors, definitions, energies of learning? Energized, energized. Oh, little tingles, excitement. Yep, engaged. Yeah, it's almost like we're leaning in, we're part of it, we're putting ourselves in the picture, right? Potential, curious, optimistic, optimism. Yeah. Movement. Love that, Abby. Yeah. That I can't use a better word than activated. And I'm going to do some coaching later where the distinction is going to be between activated and agitated, right? We hit agitated, we've gone a little too far. We've been activated, it's like we're still in it. I love that we're digging in. And vulnerable. Even, yeah, what you're saying, Jen, like, I don't know what I don't know. And I'm here to learn what I don't know so I can integrate it, right? Some effort, right? Yes, like the brain is open, curious, doesn't have all of our ideas. We're not the know-it-alls here. And if we put like percentages of where life happens, the most aliveness happens in that learning and panic zone where it is on that edge of like, I don't know what I don't know, but I'm sure as heck ready to try it out. So thank you for sharing. And how about just a couple descriptions of panic? When you yourself are in a sense of panic or you observe other people or conditions of panic, what is that like? What do we notice? Excellent. Shut down, avoid. can't breathe, freeze, closed off, paralysis, above my head, anxious, near the edge. Yeah. Yeah. Procrastinate. Yeah. If you find yourself bouncing from one place to the other, it's likely panic. Avoidance. Yes, avoidance is one of my personal favorites. Run and hide. Questions things I would have never questioned. Too much. Yeah, I love that TWO. If anything is too big or too small or too loud or too quiet or too anything, we are likely in panic. We're expressing the extremes. Always, never. Those kinds of vocabulary, that kind of distinction comes usually from panic. And again, the way out of panic is a breath and usually a partner. Pete Barrage, who is also on faculty with Center for Coaching and Organizations, has introduced and continued to maximize on the word instead. If you don't want this, what do you want instead? If you find yourself in panic or even in learning panic, really being curious if like, I hit the edge. Well, what do I want, or what was I anticipating instead that did or didn't happen? And then keep going back to that breath. Sometimes you realize you are in danger only when you're in the panic zone, right? And this is where that threat response comes up. This is where some of the more trauma-centric work, or even some of Brené Brown's vulnerability shows up, where we just feel like we're not good enough. That kind of stuff is showing up in here. So there's nothing wrong with panic. I don't want to suggest that comfort's good, learning's better, and panic is avoid. It's more around, it is an indicator that you've overextended your learning zone, and as best you can, reach for the learning comfort to restore, rather than just like repel all the way back to comfort, because then there's no learning there.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Annie, I think part of what Sino was pointing to is sometimes there is an actual, real, and present danger
In the panic zone. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like
and the distinction.
going off a cliff, climbing off a cliff.
Absolutely. And the distinction between, and we use this in the radical leadership space, the difference between like think we see a bear and actually see a bear. Our body's going to react the same way. If you think you see a bear because there is a real bear there, then you're going to respond differently than I think I see a bear, but it's not a bear, but my body is in bear relationship, right? Like I'm in panic. And so, yes, that's the place where, again, it's like, what resources do you already have that can bring you out of panic to get your frontal cortex back on to be able to move or do whatever you need to do in that example? So wonderful. Thanks. I'm going to close chat for a minute, and we're going to take our next one. Thought we would play a quick game. And I'm watching time because we are going to do a live demo. We're going to do it in 2 parts, but here's our quick game. And I think I would love everyone to come off of, this is going to be kind of a loud game, but come off of your muted microphones if you would. And I'm just going to say, if you're speaking in public, where does that throw you? I can't wait to hear Bob Sparkins.
Comfort.
Comfort. Yeah.
Comfort.
Comfortable.
A lot of comfort. A lot of comfort. Okay. How about if it's like to 5 people?
Comfort.
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 More people are comfortable for 5 people. How about 500 people?
Learning.
Panic.
Yeah. How about 5,000 people?
Panic.
That's good.
Right? Like, so that's that distinction of like, it sounds like it's always this, but it's not. We've got these ranges, or these, these versions of truth for ourselves. How about jumping out of a plane? I have a few friends who really love doing this. Comfort zone, learning zone, panic.
Learning.
Panic.
Panic.
Deep panic.
Plane in the air.
Catherine's ahead of me. Catherine knows I'm going to say, what if it's on the tarmac?
Comfort.
Most of us, right? How How about hosting a gathering? I'm thinking of friends who just love hosting gatherings. Is that comfort zone, learning zone, panic zone?
Comfort.
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 Mild panic.
Yeah, I'm people with the like it's a flurry or it's a hurry for me, right? But some people just love doing this. So I thought the expansion would be like for your family, you might notice it's different than for your neighborhood or for your entire organization. Right? But our brains almost predetermine the answer before we understand the conditions. How many of you with that live demo with me felt it was comfort zone? Like nothing but a thing, be happy to do it. You can do show of hands or voice or chat. Not very many. How about learning zone? Yeah. Cool. How about panic zone? Maybe. Yeah, a couple of like, are you kidding me? And two of my faves who were just like willing to go, yeah, that would kind of throw me in there, right? And that's okay because we're not going to put anyone in that position that doesn't want to be in that position. But ideally, you would find yourself in the learning zone to do this. And I myself am often very comfortable doing live demos, which is less usual than most coaches. I can't tell you where it comes from, but I never picked up the baton of not being comfortable. So I don't really know what that might have felt like. I get excited, but that's different than anxious, right? And I believe that my comfort comes from really, truly the coach mindset of we're in it together. It's not a performance. It's not about me. It's about us, and it's in service of the other person. But several of my colleague coaches say, you do it, Annie. I said, okay. So good. Great noticing of the distinctions. Let's see where we are now. I'm going to stop sharing here for a moment just to have a peek at all these beautiful faces. So many people came in after a little bit of a start that we did. So this is fun. What questions or comments do you have before we do a 2-part demo quickly? Questions or comments? And then we'll do a wrap up at the bottom-ish of the hour. Okay. Nothing. All right. Well, thank you, smiley faces. I do have a volunteer. Megan Bigelow has wonderfully, we were doing we had an impromptu conversation, was it earlier this week? And I said, hey, Megan, I'm doing this thing live. Would you mind, if you're open to it, being a volunteer? And she said, yes, from Learning Zone, right? So thank you to you, Megan. What I thought we would do is I'll share my screen just to reveal what we're doing, and then we will get on with the timing. And my apologies that we may be a little bit longer, but we're just going to hit part 1, Megan. The first part is going to be align our partnership and identify. Oh, go ahead, Greg. Oh,
Sorry, that was an accidental hand.
Okay. I thought I was hearing someone say something. We're going to align our partnership, identify a topic, and build trust and safety. And just because I'm noticing the interest of time, why don't we keep going, and we'll allow the rest of our time, not the whole time, to be on the coaching, and we'll do a short debrief and dismount to the bottom of the hour. What do you think about that? You good with that, Megan? Okay, good.
That's great.
So I'm going to stop sharing, and let's Megan and I just get connected. I'm going to make sure I can pin you so I can see you. Good, thank you. And thank you so much. We are pretty close to the end of the session, so I want to just get a sense for the amount of time we'll spend on this. Will probably be about 8 to 10 minutes, and then we'll just see what comes up. And if we need more time, we will create more time. Not on this call, but just you and I. How does that sound?
That sounds wonderful.
Great. Anything you need to say or do to feel like you're ready to go?
No, I do have, unfortunately, a child who got the school sickness 3 weeks into school. So she's downstairs, but if she joins us, she joins us. So
Good, good. I would love that too. She's welcome, right? All right, good. Well, thank you so much for your courage, your vulnerability, and your willingness to do this today. What topic are you bringing to our coaching discussion?
sure. Well, so recently, first time in my career, I was laid off from a role. So it's been 20 years that I've been working. And it was in the middle of the summer and kind of taking the opportunity to figure out what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my family? What is that next thing? It's always been a progress, like what is that next move upward? And now I'm looking more holistically as you know, what is that fulfillment that comes next?
Yeah. So is the focus a career focus, a career family? Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit more and then we'll. Mhm.
Yeah. Um, it's a good question. I mean, I think it's a balance between like, because your career has so many tentacles into, your happiness as an individual, like how I show up for my girls, and as a spouse. So, I think it's about what is that next move, and it could be a career. I guess it could be a career, but it could also not. It could be something that is, or it could be a label that's not what I've always called a career. It could be something that looks very different. So I think it's kind of what's that next what is that next step to continue growing and fulfilling what I need as an individual to then show up as my like with my family.
So it could be like a position, a job, a career, and
Yep.
it sounds like it has components that it's work, like there's work involved, and that there's money exchanged. Am I hearing you right? Like
Yep.
it's for a profit for your household.
So I would say that's one part of it. I would say yes, the next move is how do I like yes, how what does that compensation piece look like? But then I feel like the opportunity has redirected what I've always looked at as that next,
Yeah.
So it's a part of it, but it's not everything. It's also now like what are the other parts that need to come together to be that whole. So
Yeah.
yes, it is financial is a part of it, but there's also this space of, motherhood, and there's the space of spouse, and there's a space of womanhood, and who I am and what fulfills me. And so I think it's kind of multiple compartments.
Where do you find yourself? Comfort zone, learning zone, panic zone?
So I think when I was first laid off, it was total panic zone. And then
Mhm.
I, I, I like melded, I navigated through to this learning zone where again I think I'm relabeling it means to be have a career and to be working and et cetera. So there's that part of me. I feel like in the learning zone, right? There's that part of me that's always been told like, oh, you have to save your money and you have to have a 401k and you have to, your kids have to have a college plan and, all of these things. And so now I'm in this learning zone where it's almost kind of like a bobber, right? Like I've
Got
used
it.
this analogy before, but the bobber comes up and then sometimes it's like, what are you going to do about your 401k? And then it kind of goes down. And then I'm like, oh, I'm, learning how to be a kickboxing instructor. This is really cool. And then, and so like then all of these things kind of bob up and down. So it's this like learning
Yeah.
where there's maybe little blips of panic where you're like, what about this? But then you're like, this is really cool. I wouldn't have the opportunity to do this.
So this is like there's a lot of energy. I'm noticing a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiastic moments of panic. And I love that example of a bobber, right? Like the bobber kind of like I'm hearing pulls you under panic. Is
Yeah.
that your description? And then pops you up, and then it's like learning expression, edge of possibilities, kickboxing. So I'm noticing a sensation of like readiness or wanting or yearning. Do you have a picture of like my crazy wildest dream, ideal state would be XYZ? You don't even have to express it, but is there something in your mind like, in my wildest dream, if I could have this, this is what I would want?
I think it's more of a like how I feel when I'm there than it is an actual thing, if that makes sense. So like I think in my last role, I felt like there was a lot of times where I was like my kids got the remnants, because I felt like I was in the panic zone in that role. And so my kids and my health and my marriage got what was left over, and like all the words that we use to describe what it feels like to be in that panic zone.
Yeah.
And I so when I think about what I feel like I have opportunities to be present in their lives, not just in the morning and at night, but also just, their activities, volunteering at their school, doing things like that where I'm able to be there and present in what their lives are. And then I also am not exhausted, like mental exhaustion is not there anymore because there's this excitement and so that's kind of how I feel, where I feel like at the end of the day, yes, I'm tired and I'm ready to fall asleep, but it's also because I've had joy throughout the day, and not because I've completely used everything that I had in the tank. And so now I have to go to sleep because if I don't, then I don't have anything left.
So
So
I want to acknowledge the experience that you're having, the positive experience you're having with your family now, and renewing your sense of self, your sense
yeah.
of being a mom, of being in
Yep.
community, of being a spouse, of taking good care of yourself. And what I'm hearing is like a declaration. What are you declaring? That no matter what somebody comes up with you, because I mean, we could do like job possibilities and we'll do all
Yeah.
that later, but like, what are you declaring that is a stake in the ground that you have for whatever
Yeah.
is next for you?
I think it's that like if I have a finite amount to give, that there are things that get the priority before others.
Mhm.
And it's a shift because it's still finite and I still only have that amount to give, but being able to like actively prioritize that and put myself in a position where I know that I won't relax into old behaviors,
Mhm.
so I'm actively prioritizing that. So I think that's no, I think something that I've done in the past is say why I can't do something instead of saying why I can do it. And so there's been a lot of like, for me, a lot of rephrasing back to, well, I can, go sort through all the first grade like library books. I can do that. I can have lunch with my kids. And even if when I get a job, I can still say that. I can still say, I prioritize this. Like I can do this instead of, well, I have to work, so I can't be the mom who volunteers at the school.
Mm. I just want to acknowledge that again, like noticing how you have redefined yourself and your identity in clarity. All right, this is what you can count on me for. This is what I'm hearing in your language is like, here's what you can count on me for, and here's what you can't count on me for. Like I'm
Right.
not that person who's always going to be doing XYZ. And that's what I mean by declaration. And there
Yep.
may be some work that we do after this around like just creating those count on me for, can't count on me for
Yeah.
commitments for yourself, for your family, for your employer. And
Yep.
it may be more than one work stream. if you will, right? That's what I'm also hearing too, is that it doesn't need to be one person, one organization doesn't have to be the end all be all for you,
Right.
but
Yep.
you are going to tend to yourself.
Yep.
If we made that concentric circle look different, it would be self, family, organization, versus it sounds
Right.
like it got a little inside out. It was organization, family,
Right.
self there for a while. Yeah.
Mhm. And it hasn't always been like that, right? Like, I think it's just the recentering. You know, I don't think it's like a lifetime, all of a sudden now I'm like, oh, I need to refocus on my kids. You know, I think it's that it's easy when you get into something heads down to stray from, you know, what your core beliefs have been. And maybe the core beliefs is not a right word, but what you have prioritized in the past.
Right. Yeah.
So now it, you know, it's this opportunity to recenter and say, oh, this is who I am. This is, you know, what I believe in, what my values are.
So I'm curious we have a limited amount of time, but what, if
Sure.
anything, is shifting for you because of our little time together today, and any bold or inspired actions coming forward based on what we've talked about?
I think it's, you know, and you and I have talked about this before, but again, it's redefining what career looks like for me. You know, I think that I come from a long line of people, you know, my parents worked, my grandmothers both had their PhDs, you know, back in the 40s, like very highly educated women who worked and, you know, and did that. And now I'm looking at what does that word mean? You
Okay.
know, and how do I redefine it? It may be, you know, traditional, like going to the office, work in a big corporation, or it may be freelance, or it may be, you know, a pause as my kids get older, or it, you know, it may be all these things. And so I think that that's kind of what I look at is what is that really define? What is that definition for me? How do I continue to explore that?
Yeah. So a boldest action or inspired action would be what from today?
So I actually this happened this morning quite a bit, but I have a lot of different people reaching out to me on LinkedIn. You know, and I have an incredible network and I feel so blessed. And I'm saying yes to everything because I'm where I might not have said before, to just say, I want to talk about it. I want to know more about, like, what are you, you know, what do you have to offer? You know, before, where someone would have been like, oh, it's a consulting position or it's a contracting position. And, you know, I think in past it would be like, oh no, I need full time. I need, you know, all these things. And now I'm, I think, ready to just say yes and to have conversations and explore, like, what does that look like and how do, you know, what does that next step look like? Because it doesn't have to be what it's always been. It can be, you know, all these different opportunities.
I'm super excited for you, because that was going to be my big challenge question, was like, what are you willing to say yes to? And would you be really willing to say yes to everything? So here you've already stepped into it. You mentioned that we've talked about this before. We've talked years ago. We did the breast cancer
Oh, yeah.
3-day, right? You know, so, but the reference is there, like, now what are you saying yes to? I'm hearing everything. And then you'll manage that later, rather than what your earlier version of yourself would have been like, let's be realistic and manage this up front.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. We'll pause there on the actual coaching models, see what we want to say for closing this segment, and then we want to allow for time for questions before people fall off or decide they're going to practice themselves. And Megan, you're welcome to stay on and practice with others as long as your little one is okay. So thank you.
Yeah, she's okay.
I'd love everybody to say thank you to Megan for that. And then Bev, let's open it up for comments, questions to me rather than Megan and her scenario that she brought forth. But of course, now you know that if you want to hire somebody incredible, Megan's saying yes to everything right now. The rest of it is logistics. Comments or questions?
Love that, Annie. Yeah, folks, before you're dropping off, I am going to put a link in the chat for a place where you can find um, all about what CCO is up to and where you might indeed see Annie again and that sort of thing. But before I do any wrap up to this sort of first segment, yeah, what questions might you have about Annie's approach to coaching Megan?
Not so much a question, but a comment. It comes as a surprise to no one that there's as much affirmation in Annie's coaching as there is, because that's one of her many superpowers. But what I took away from that was just in the course of the conversation of just recognizing what feels like a step forward, no matter how small it is, and calling that out. That yeah, you didn't get to the finish line, but you did this, and sometimes the people you're talking to don't recognize that as any kind of progress.
Thanks, Greg. I love the distinction between affirmation and nice. A Minnesota nice or a nice would be just like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. Or I get it, or that happens to me too, right? Versus I see you, I hear you, I notice. What else, right? Thank you. Yeah.
And where did you feel you were pushing on Megan in the conversation?
Well, Megan had done so much of her own self motivation and so it was around that declaration, like what is your willingness to declare or to stand in and for, different frame of all the things that she was doing, but more around holding that position of like, these are the non-negotiables or this isn't where I move. So did you feel something like that or something else, Jen?
You did. I just wanted to were you intentionally pushing? That's what I was curious about, where you were coming from.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd say, Annie, one of the things I noticed is the power of just choice of words to bring something to a slightly edgier place. So instead of, so what could you do between now and the next session? What are the boldest, most inspired actions you could take? And the way that, in our coach lingo, calls people forth to something bigger than they might have chosen to say.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with asking them, what's one or two things you'll do between, or, what have you learned? Those are great and they're helpful. And the range there is to have them reach further. And there wasn't any time in this demo for me to like give an example of what I might have done or really challenge her personally, to anything that wasn't already shared, right? So how about anything that was missing, something you expected? You might have expected some real tough, get in there, gnawing at the bit kind of comments. Was that missing here for you? And it's okay if that was. Okay, good. People have to jump at the bottom. You can jump if you need to jump. Go ahead. Hi, Abby.
Hi. I think I was expecting a little bit more of that, what you were just sharing, and it was encouraging to me to not see it in the way that I expected it from a coach's seat.
Mm-hmm. I want you to still be yourself in integrity to your degree of that directness, that edginess. Remember, it's for the sake of the other person. So it's outside of my comfort zone, but it isn't to be outside of my authentic self. Right.
And I found myself wondering, Annie, what it would be like if it was somebody who was unfamiliar to you. Because you and Megan have a certain level of comfort because of the longevity of your relationship.
Really high trust, right? But we haven't spoken in like 6 years. So that was why we just said, let's just try it. Cool. Thank you.
Annie, you underestimate the power of 6 years ago and what happened then to affect what happens now.
Absolutely. Yeah. There are just so few people that I wouldn't know already here, but it's worth pointing out. And I'm happy to do more, right? Like if there's somebody who wants to do a follow-up, we'll share that.
Yeah.
And maybe to that point, like when you have a new client, I mean, how do you onboard them to be your directness, your way, and we're not having nice conversations? Like, what do you do differently than most people do?
Great question.
I love that question, Jen. And I right away, I talk about comfort zone, learning zone, panic zone. And I say, if we are hanging out in your comfort zone or my comfort zone too long, we're not coaching. You don't need me for that. And I don't need you for that. Like, I go so far as to say, look, I don't need any more friends. I might want more friends, but I hardly get to see the friends that I have. So if we are friendly, we're not working to the edges and the possibilities. We're not going to be mean, but we're going to move into that learning panic edge of possibilities. So yeah. So I onboard them that succinctly. And I always say I'm nice, but I'm not that nice. Go ahead.
I just said, you do that to your friends too.
I do that to my friends too. I do. Well, most of my friends are coaches, so that's why we can sort of hang in the lingo, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I would welcome everybody to notice how their body might have felt when Annie was saying how she does the onboarding. And if you put yourself in the position of client, what might you feel? And I was trying to do that, and I could feel my tummy just tighten a little bit, sort of that nervous, excited, like, uh-oh, what did I sign up for? And she looks really nice, but now I'm a little nervous, which of course can be a great thing. And Megan, you've got your hand up.
Oh, so I don't know if Anne like even remembers this, but we worked together when I think I was 23 or 24. So like 18 years ago. And I will always remember this, but one of the things, as a 23-year-old, like I would complain about something that was happening. We had a very good relationship, and, and I would come over, and I remember one time coming over to Annie's desk, and I sat down and I started to complain about something that was happening. And I don't know if you remember this, but you said to me, okay, before you get into what you're going to say, I need to know what you need from me. Do you need me to be a sounding board? Do you need me to give you my opinion, or do you need me to help you solve this? And when she first said it, my response was, like, what are you trying to do? You're trying to coach me? Like what, and I was like, well, I don't know. And I've remembered that for the last, 18 years, because it helped me to be able to know for her that she wanted me to like define what the best way to help me was. And I even use that now with my kids. And so I feel like that's one of those things that, it kind of helped level set what the intention of the conversation was. Cause I went into it just wanting to kind of word vomit, the perils of a 23-year-old. And she helped define like what, how can I best help you? And so it was, and again, like here I am 40, almost 41, and I still remember that. And and it's helped me to figure out how I define and help people the best way that they need in that moment. So, I kind of think about that with coaching, and the way that, like, I think, Anne, you've responded to me is that you always make sure that I know, like, here's like, you're able to help define, like, how do I best need the help? And then also be able to kind of like, instill that, but drive what you're helping me get through.
And that hopefully, like, all of our coaching clients are experiencing, finding their own voice, their own wisdom, their own new paradigm shifts that show up through their thinking out loud. I have this still relatively true reputation of working with really, really challenging clients. When the organization finds them challenging, they send them to me. And I find them challenging for about 5 minutes at most. And then they just sort of calm down because they're wired really tightly. And then we just move into, like, let's get that frontal cortex back online, right? That we've got a head, heart, and hands, body. And so that's really, I love what you're speaking to, Megan, is just to check in, what would be in service of this person as a friend, as a parent, and as a coach, and especially in the coaching, like Bev, you've said this to me, no one comes to coaching to do what they can do alone. They come to coaching to do what they can't or won't or haven't been able to do alone. And that's why we're on the edge with them, because it is together that we can get through to new possibilities.
So I want to notice our time, and I want to hit pause for a second and do a few administrative announcements, and then get back in for folks who want to stay and might want to do a little practice under Annie's tutelage. So first of all, if you've loved this or you know people who've loved this, then we've got an executive coaching and organizations cohort starting this spring, and Annie will be with us. So if you want to keep learning from folks like Annie, Chris Indahl, who's on this call, I'm on faculty also. Lynn's been through the program, Abby's been through the program. You know, it's an opportunity for folks. So we'd love for you to help us get the word out, because it's ICF accredited coaching education with a specific focus on coaching in organizations, regardless of the type of organizations, regardless of whether you want to be an internal coach, external coach, or you want to up-level your leadership skills or the culture of your organization. And I mentioned those in-person community connects. You'll find information on the link that I put in chat that I'll repeat here also. And that will be October, December, and February. There's another Growth Rings coming up with my dear, dear friend, Chris Indahl, who you can see still on this call. And she's going to be doing our November 21st Growth Rings about coaching grieving leaders.
Yes. Good.
So some of you might have felt yourself just drop right down into your heart. And that's where this woman lives, is in the heart of supporting grieving leaders, whether it's grieving about social unrest, a personal loss of a person in family or friendship circles, a loss of something key to their identity, profoundly affecting them. She has a lot of wisdom in this, and I'm so glad she said yes to our invitation. Our summit is April 24th of 2025, and there will be a call for speakers coming out this fall. So if you know great speakers, especially evidence-based, seasoned ICF credentialed coaches, recommend that they take a look and see if there's something they might want to offer through the summit. Also for you folks, it's a chance to get very inexpensive CEUs, Coaching Continuing Ed. And again, I said there is an Echo start this spring, and we'd love to have you spread the word about all of this. So much we offer is no charge, the Connects and the Growth Rings, and so much is at reasonable rates like the summit. And we also are doing our best as a nonprofit to make sure that we can also offer scholarships to expand the reach and representation in coaching and coaching education. So now I would just say, for this little piece, y'all come off mute and give some woot woots and some thank yous and whatever to Annie before we turn off the recording and launch into the second part.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Woot woot.
Annie.
You rock,
Thanks,
Anne.
Annie. Woohoo!
So great to be with you again.